Cool, recording. So first of all, I use a wet palette, and this is not something that's necessary. You can use a dry palette just fine. Just know that with a dry palette, it's going to cause your paints to dry really quickly. Secondly, actually, you know what? I can give you an example of that. I have a dry palette. Dry palette, cool. Okay. So let's say, for example, I want to paint something purple. So I got these dropper. No, you know what? Even I'll use a Citadel paint since I know you have Citadel paints. Yeah, let's go ahead and go with Bugman's Glow. As you can see, the Bugman's Glow needs to be shaken up a little bit, so I'm gonna do that really quickly. And there you go. What you typically want to do with that, and I feel like you're probably doing all these things, and there's something else that I'm unaware of that's an issue, but I'll even use like the Citadel paintbrush. You take a little bit of it, and you just kind of put it in there, right? And so now you've got a little smear of Bugman's Glow on your palette. And you can't really paint using it exactly from there, which again, you probably already are aware of. This probably is something you've already dealt with. But you got your mini. The thing you don't want to do is you don't want to just take the Bugman's Glow and apply it right on the mini because then it's really stodgy and really lumpy on there, and that's generally not a good look. So you're going to want to water it down. And if you give me a second, let me clean this guy off. And the way that you water it down is you take a drop or so of water, so just a little bit to get the brush wet, and then you mix it in with your paint. And that might have actually been a little too much. It's kind of a game of trying to figure out how much is the right amount of paint to water ratio, and you'll figure it out as you continue painting. But after you do that, you'll just want to go ahead and start applying it to the mini. And what you'll probably see happen if it's too thin is that it'll kind of be, well, actually not even too thin. If it's the right thickness, is it's kind of transparent or translucent, right? Um, you'll see though I'm getting half decent coverage, but once I get it on the mini, I don't really want to try and apply a new layer until that stuff is dry because what's going to happen is if I continue to try and put more paint on there is I'm just going to push it around and that'll leave weird bare spots, right? So I'm just going to keep painting the rest of the guy until that top part dries off, which should take about 15 to 30 seconds, right? And I don't know if you have this. It's a flesh tone called Bugman's Glow. It came with a starter box that I got many years ago. I don't really use it for much. I think I used it to paint some zombies a long time ago, but it's not something super necessary. But what'll happen after you paint that first layer and it dries is now you've got a much better base to paint on your second and third your second layers. Two thin coats tends to be the popular uh, phrase because that's something Duncan Rhodes kind of popularized. But once this kind of dries, and you can see it drying a little more on the side of the face than everywhere else, you can add another layer, and you see that second layer is now getting considerably better coverage than that first layer, right? And my palette is still wet and thinned enough that I can continue using the paint. But again, you kind of just want to dip, the tip of your brush into your paint water and then mix it in with your paint. And you might make a few mistakes learning this because learning the right paint to water ratio, like I said, is a bit difficult at first until you kind of get that feel. But it's going to make your painting a whole lot better. And you can see, even though it's still kind of poking through a bit, he's got considerably better coverage. It's still thin enough that you can make out the fine details, right? So, give me a second. Let's get that Bugman's Glow again. I'm going to really screw up this brush. The other thing is, try and keep it on the top 30 of your brush. Don't put paint further up because then it gets in the ferrule, which helps separate the tip, which is bad. But I'm going to get a big gob of Bugman's Glow, throw it on there, and I'm going to go ahead and uh, really fuck up this brush. So let's get it all in there. Get it like that. And now you see I've got a whole ton of it on the brush, but I want to clean the brush and make it so I can use it again. I'm going to rinse it off in my paint cup. I'm going to tap the water off, and I'm going to try and just use a paper towel to clean it off. And if you do that, you can see that by and large it's okay. With some of the darker colors, though, you might see if you put some more water on it and roll it around, the water comes out tinted that color. That means you still got, unless your water's really dirty, you still got paint making its way up in the ferrule and whatnot. So if I do a bad job, I just put this in some black. If I do a bad job, you see how it's now just like an ink because there's still so much black in the brush. So if I shake that off a little more and I roll it around, you can see even there's still some black. So you really want to make sure you're getting it completely clean in your paint cup. And the other thing is, like, don't jam the brush like that because that really screws up the ferrule. It gets paint jammed in there and particles. At the very end of your painting session, you probably want to, on like a bar of soap or something, roll it across the soap gently, specifically like a paint soap or a conditioner. And that helps restore it to about as good a tip as you can get, which may not be great depending on the quality of your brush, but it's definitely better than leaving it with paint in it. The other thing is you don't want to really store the brush up because that allows water and particulate to get into the ferrule, which then splits the bristles. Like you can pretty clearly see it. This is an older brush that has a tip that is clearly messed up. This is a newer version of the exact same brush where more of the bristles are still attached and the guide bristle is still there, so it has a much finer tip. Generally, especially with like washes and metallics and whatnot, you don't want to use the same brush that you've used for regular painting because washes and metallics tend to gum up the ferrule and really separate it out, so you're not able to do fine detail with it. That's what I got. Hope that helps, and I'll see you later, I suppose.